On behalf of everyone on the Enqbator team, I'd like to welcome you to another in our series of ThinkTenq webinars. Most importantly, thank you very much for taking the time out of your schedules to join us for today's open discussion. Should be a nice close-knit group, a nice open discussion on this exciting topic of AI. And before we get started, I just want to explain kind of briefly our format for today. So on hand to help guide today's open discussion from our team at Enqbator, we have Jon Montenegro, who is our Director of UX and Design. Hello. And also Sujal Raju, who is our CEO and Founder. And we'll let them talk in a minute. First, like I said, we want to let everyone know we're going to be recording the session. And we'll edit and post this as part of our ongoing ThinkTenq webinar series. And as mentioned, we want this to be a very, very open discussion, a very relaxed, casual discussion on today's topic of GPT and AI. So however you want to participate, that is up to you. On camera, off camera, muted, not just listening in, whatever you want to do, whatever's nice and relaxing for you today. But we hope to have you all join in as much as possible for today's discussion. We will have the Q&A feature available through the webinar. So if you feel you want to jot down any questions that you might have using that method, feel free to do it that way. And we'll make sure we will take a look at those and get everything addressed. If you are participating in the discussion, we've kind of introduced those on hand today so far. But if you are participating and you haven't yet, please do us a favor and introduce yourself, where you're from, and that way we can help everyone get a feel for your particular market or your particular workplace situation. So before we fully get into it, what we'd like to do is we've kind of put together a quick 4-question poll just to kind of get a vibe for everyone's feelings on the topic today. So let me send that to you right now. We just ask you to take a couple minutes and fill that out. No right or wrong answers on this, so just a quick few questions to kind of help guide our discussion. So let me get that set up.
Yeah, while you're doing that, I'll go ahead and introduce myself.
Absolutely, thank you.
Yeah, my name is Tony Arden. I work for Children's National Medical Center, or Children's National Hospital is the new name. Been there for 21 years. That's where I met Kathy years ago. I've had many positions there. I currently lead the Identity and Access Management team, which is part of the cybersecurity infrastructure team at Children's.
Awesome. Thank you, Anthony. In your chat, you should get a quick poll. It's just a few questions we'd like to have everyone answer, just to kind of get a feel for the vibe of today and help our discussion. So you can answer that real quickly.
Yes.
And then we'll get moving from there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, good to see. Some exciting responses there. All right, looks like everyone's got that taken care of. Quick and painless. All right, thanks everyone. All right, enough of me talking. At this time, I'd like to have Jon and Sujal introduce themselves real quick. They're going to help us guide today's discussion on this topic. So real quick, Sujal, just a quick hello and your role here at Enqbator.
Sounds good, Dave. Thank you so much. Thank you all for joining and spending this time with us. We do this Think Tank series as part of an educational program at Enqbator. We encourage our customers, and in some cases, bring in some, I would say, knowledge experts in a particular domain. Time to time, invite them, guest speakers, to come in and talk. So feel free to check us out on YouTube. Dave kind of acts as the moderator for some of these. And, so with this topic, ChatGPT, as you can all tell, it's all over the news, especially since the beginning of this year. There has been a whole lot going on in terms of how people are using it. We ourselves have been experimenting it for a while. We first started working with it during the COVID years. We wanted to help as soon as the COVID hit, we wanted to help the community, especially our hospitals in our area, and try to help with the situation. So we came up with our own administrative assistant at that time, and also, a tool that could give out analytics. And this was quite important because if people wanted to know where is the nearest urgent care center, where is the nearest emergency room that I can go to, what does the traffic look like, possibly even doing the COVID risk assessment at that time to say whether the symptoms that you're facing is that, maybe a flu or maybe, allergies or whatnot, and not mistaking them for COVID and then, trying to rush to the emergency, things like that. So we kind of experimented with that. We did create some products out of it, but naturally, like the progression of this is like, opened up a whole lot in terms of what is possible. So we thought like, let's have a webinar on it. This is a private session. I'm also speaking at a conference at HMPS. And Bob and I are talking about 5G, which is another technology that's coming up. In addition to all of these technology advancements that we are making, I think it's going to increase what I call as, hyper personalization in terms of everything that we do. For example, if you're going to go to a grocery store to shop, or even before you go to it, how does that experience look like? How does your house look like in terms of automation of all these devices? We've been talking about Internet of Things, there's just so many things that can interact with AI and benefit from it. And in our case, primarily with being part of the marketing team or working with the digital team, which is the websites, the mobile apps, and then the digital touch points with our customers, what can we do from it? My role here at Enqbator, I founded Enqbator about 12 years ago. And I am a developer myself, started working at a large healthcare system here in Michigan. And from there, created our own content management system. And, my passion has always been in internet technologies, whether it be web and mobile and automation from the beginning. Like since 20 years, wrote several applications, been involved with several things, exciting things. Some have won, national awards. And I'm just happy to have the team that we have here at Enqbator. Everyone is super talented, and I kind of act as a technical advisor for the team and let the experts and the really talented people in the team do the magic, and I just take the credit for it. But that's my role here. And I'll pass it on to Jon. Again, another great, super talented designer from our team. He leads the design team. Very good, very knowledgeable in UX UI, and just happy to have him with me in this discussion today with all of you. Jon,
Thanks,
if you wanna, yeah.
Yeah, my name is Jon Montenegro. I'm the design director here at Enqbator. So I'm responsible for UX and UI design here. And I've been in this field for about 15, 20 years. And from my experience, I've been using AI more and more on my day-to-day. And I think it's kind of interesting that I was just looking at the poll. It's at like 86%. And I am curious to know how other people are using it. I find myself using it, like I said, almost every day. And I've gotten to a point where I'm creating customized apps to help me, using AI to help me with my UX and UI design activities. So, some of the people, like I said, the poll's at 86%. I'm curious to know how other people have used it in the workplace. Does anyone want to speak more about that, or?
Sure, yeah, I will. So I've used, I think I found out about ChatGPT maybe, probably 2 to 3 months ago, and I started looking into it a little bit more, and I gave it a shot, and I'm like, this is a really powerful tool.
Yeah.
As a digital marketing specialist, it really helps with content creation, and I'm not talking word for word, but it's nice to have that as a tool in the toolbox. For you ask it to create like a social media post for a particular topic, a promotion or whatever you may have, and it might give you something back that you never really considered that angle, and it gives you different some different verbiage. So it's a nice tool to have in the toolbox.
That's interesting, man.
Yep.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think that I think you made a good point about saying that it's a good tool, like on the side,
Yes.
because that's a very good point. Because during UX research, I'm very careful about fully depending upon it.
Of course.
Right. So
Yeah.
we go through the same process, and I do the same thing. I do make some prompts for marketing as well, but at the same time, I'm very careful because I still want to go through. Maybe I'm being old school or what, but I still want to go through the old processes and not fully depend upon AI to come up with, like you said, social media posts or content creation for websites and that. Right. So
yeah, I completely agree with you there. It's for me in my position, I use it as a tool, but I'm not completely reliant upon it.
Right.
Great. Thanks, Ryan. Bob, you look like you had some input there.
Well, I concur with Ryan's use of as a tool, because what it did with our marketing group is it infused a real high degree of paranoia about plagiarism.
Yeah.
And there are some things that are very unique to our space. So I'm in the addiction medicine space. If we type in, can you please define the definition of addiction? It's pulling generally our information because we're a lead space, I imagine, or an authority as deemed by some sites. But in content creation, like blog posts and things of that nature, we're just really paranoid about using it in the context of word for word. But when you're really up a kind of a content mental block of where to begin, it is that type of tool. So I concur with what Ryan's use is to date.
Yep.
Thanks, Bob.
Yeah.
Tony, have you used it yet?
Yeah, it's kind of I guess it's kind of in its infancy at Children's. Again, I'm on the identity access management team, so we work with a platform called SailPoint to do all of our identity and access management. So when a person joins the hospital, they come through PeopleSoft, which is our HR tool. They flow into SailPoint, which is the platform that my team manages, and then that takes care of their access to things like the network, email, and downstream systems. So we've used chat for various things, everything from giving us some tips on SailPoint, IIQ optimization, coming up with some effective metrics that we can use, as well as now we're looking into how it can write proposals as well. So there's a myriad of things that it can do, and we're just scratching the surface. And then there's the day-to-day things like, we use it also on things like, vetting our emails, not just looking for grammar and typos, but we have different audiences. A lot of our the output from my team is very technical, and we might need to send something up the chain to C-level executives. So we can use the tonal features of chat to maybe take some of the edges off of it and make it more of a high level read for the the executive level folks. So you name it, we're looking at using it in as many ways as we can. But we are at its infancy. I would say we don't really have an expert on site at this point, but we're working towards that every day.
Got it, Tony. Thank you. From our end, there is, in terms of just websites or mobile apps, there's different avenues that are opening up right now. I think Jon mentioned UI, UX, possibly using some suggestions, not necessarily using it as the output, but just suggestions and then using those elements because it's capable to sense the sentiment as well. One interesting read that I had was that, using ChatGPT to understand customer feedback through social media, because sometimes you don't understand, like, just by that one sentence that they're typing in, you don't understand where they're coming from, right? Because some people are very good at expressing what they want to say using words, and many are not, right? So they come across as being really upset or the other way, but we don't understand the real, I would say, the message that they're trying to portray in terms of what they need. And I think ChatGPT could probably understand that sentiment, right? So that's one way of automation in terms of social media posts and understanding the feedback or interacting with people that way. And the other is language translations. Language translations is going to get better and better. I think it's going to understand and speak most of the, the higher, like, the most populated, the languages that are more popular among populations in general, the top 10 languages in US or whatnot, and it can translate. So that's other avenue that, could be done. Now, again, that could be an assistant that, you could use it as an assistant to begin with. We talked about content writing. So you write it in, or ask it to write content in certain area. Once you get that, then you modify it, correct it, and then use it, but then also translate it into various languages. Most content management systems allow you to, show different versions based on localization. So that's another interesting way. So if you don't have staff that can do that, you could possibly use that as an option. And I think for us in Enqbator, we are looking at a few different areas. Like chat is obvious in terms of using that, for example, like showing all the major clinical services at a hospital, or for a bank, Ryan, like giving all the products, all the rates and everything to it, and then once it knows about it, connecting the prompt to the search bar. So if they type something in, possibly like a question, then it can possibly answer it in a more natural language, format output. So these are possible things that we are looking at. We are experimenting with one major thing that will come out in a few months. So I'll announce that at that time. But that should help each and every website, no matter which domain that you're in. So I think so that tells us about what the possibilities are. I wonder if any of you could talk about some of the in your each of your domains, what some of your concerns are, because I know there's a lot about how many jobs is it going to replace, or what are the possibilities of someone using it in a rogue way, right, and then possibly causing some disruption. So does anyone want to say something about that?
Well, I just want to chime in and talk about that, especially coming from the creative field. And I think Sujal and I think we talked about this before, that there is some copyright issues involved, especially with creatives. I was telling Sujal actually today about the story about this artist who, or actually this person who originally wanted to commission an artist to do like a digital piece, a digital art piece for her. And what happened was she ran into an AI that would actually imitate the artist's style and then create the piece for her. And not only that, but what the AI did was, not only did it create the artist's style based upon her prompts, but also include her signature, the artist's signature, into the piece. So it's kind of, now there's like this sort of gray area of, copyright and how do we, I don't want to say control that, but how do we monitor that in a more effective way? And it goes along with any type of information, not just creative information, not just artwork. So that's just the concern I have.
Yeah, and I think Bob mentioned that ChatGPT is probably giving information on addiction from their website right now.
Right,
Exactly.
exactly.
Sourcing that information. I don't know if it quoted that's where it got the information, Bob? Did it do that, or did it not do that?
It did not. It did not. So if it was written in a journalistic form, it would say, as cited by the American Society of Addiction Medicine, the definition would be. That's very similar to just mobile search. That's how that would pull up. Chat GPT is almost responding in the context of a first person, so it does not cite sources. I should try. So can you please cite the sources and define the definition of addiction and see what it pulls?
Got it, Bob. Yeah.
Yeah, that is a feature that you can have it cite its reference links, or the source where it got the information.
Oh, perfect.
Right.
That's great.
I wonder if it, not giving credit, for example, creative, right? I mean, that's like their proprietary design or a way of doing things. And if AI generates that, is that considered a violation or not? That sort of a thing. The other, interesting AI piece that I'm looking at, which sounds fearful to me a little bit, is voice AI, right? Where it can use text and convert that to a language sampling that it has got. For example, there is a lot of sites that, a lot of videos on YouTube that you can find where, people have experimented using voice AI, and now it can speak in most of the celebrities, way or voice, right? So you can interact with it and it'll respond as if, how Barack Obama would respond, or Trump would respond, or Morgan Freeman would respond, and things like that. So what I wonder with that is, if you connect that and you use someone's voice, use enough sampling, and you kind of know how they speak, right? The behaviors and all of that, and now interact with any online system like a bank, right? And it's using your voice to confirm who you are, and you're able to now interact with, or even your own staff, right? If someone pretends to be Sujal and interacts with my staff, how does that work? We're not prepared for it yet, right? But someone could use this technology and go after things like that. And so that's one thing that, I think there should be some regulation. But at the same time, I wonder how that could work, because these things, and not only voice, and I think with GPT-4, it can now use input of voice, images, and text. And I think there's one more. But this, it's getting into areas where now, it can, produce a high quality output. And I fear somewhat in how, which direction that can go. So to give some perspective, I remember helping my dad and mom, with going and doing banking online, right? That generation did not do that. They're used to going to the banks and interacting with the bank, paying the bills, and then came all the era of paying and doing everything online, statements online and transactions online, and they were just not used to it. They were retired by when that had popped up. So just explaining them how that works and all the scams, that happen, they just don't understand. And now throwing this on top of that, there is a certain sector of our community, our I would say community that is affected by it, that we're vulnerable with this technology. So that's something that I fear.
One of the intriguing questions that I have, this is Bob again, is that as we start as a company, I'd be excited to integrate the power of the natural language and GPT elements inside of our own customer service, just like you would with a normal automated response chatbot through some of the off-the-shelf apps that we have. But I wonder, because ChatGPT uses or delivers messaging based on millions and millions of people input for correct answers, not correct answers, things of that nature, and then self-learns. How does that apply when we integrate it inside of a company or domain organization for knowledge in it? So the next level of the customer service chatbot using the power of the GPT, how long does it take to learn everything about my organization? And what environments or parameters do you use to build from it? Right?
Bob, that's a good question. That is something that you know, we have been experimenting for a few months now, and that is kind of one of the products that we might release, you know, when we are very comfortable with it. But to answer your question, yes, it is possible to expose your data to it. You basically, you know, I don't want to use the word scrape, but you know, you essentially grab all your data, give it to it, and then say, just look at this for your context. And then when the prompts are, you know, create kind of a prompt that only looks at that data and answers all your questions. So it creates Q&A that it can do based off that, or you can plug it into different areas to plot graphs or something like that, like, you know, based on whatever the user wants. But it is possible to just look at that domain and not the outside one for scope. Yeah.
Just to add to that, that's what I've done for UX research in that I made an app that plugs into a certain amount of data. Then I say, don't use the global data, but just use data off this particular database or Excel file or JSON file. And then prompts will only come based off that data. So it's, I'm already limiting into a specific thing. So if I have a client with 800 responses that are open-ended questions, and I want to get questions about it, or I want prompts against it, I will only focus and I will only upload that particular data to it. So it only looks at that data and only answers to that data. So,
and not to get too technical for this limited time that we have, but Jon, is that worked in that data? Is it set up in a schema, just like we would set up our website, so it's identified as appropriate information, like you said, in JSON, or just?
Yeah, there's a couple ways I did it. I've written stuff that I can read a CBS file or I can read an Excel file, or I can read a data or a JSON endpoint. So either way, like I said, let's say I have a response, like a survey response of open-ended questions, and I can ask it to say, only look, and I specifically coded it in a way to only look at that specific data and say, give me responses on this, give me pain points on that, frustration, sentiment, things like that, trends, most common words, but it's only looking at that data. So technically you could use it with, you know, when we think about marketing, let's say you only want to scrape, you know, tweets from a certain user, or even if you have a library, you can only pull from that library. It is possible just to pull from that, and then GPT-3 will only look at that data. So.
Yeah. And I want to add, like, you know, so Bob, there is 3 steps to this process, you know, not to get too technical, but one is to scrape the data like we talked about, and JSON endpoints, or however you want to do it. The next piece is to train it. So training part is where you kind of say, like, condition it to say, like, hey, these are the types of data I have. Not everything is content. One is a product, one is a service. Like, you know, you kind of train it, and then it learns from it, right? The deep learning happens after that. And the more interactions happen, it can just start keeping on improving itself, right? And that's the beauty of it. And the results just get better and better from there on. And then, you know, so those are 2 steps. And the last step is obviously the presentation, which is plugging into the search bar or the chat bar where people can interact with it.
Boy, medical research could take huge leaps forward with searching databases, journals, abstracts, information, proprietary data. Fascinating.
Exactly. And, you know, with the, you know, advancements in images, right? Medical research, like, for example, mammography and things like that, early detection. I mean, this is huge, and it's cutting down. I think MIT is running some research on it right now, where it's trying to, you know, let it learn from all of the, you know, X-rays or CT scans that have been found, you know, for, I would say CT scans, not, or what do you call that? Yeah, mammograms. Yeah, exactly. And then, you know, getting to see that so that they can detect what appears to be a very tiny dot, and then it can actually understand that, hey, this is, you know, cancerous or not non-cancerous, and be able to, you know, allow physicians to detect it, take a look at it, and then fix it, before it becomes, too late. So this is really promising in that way.
Skynet is alive.
Well, talk about that, Bob. I mean, wasn't there a movie about robots taking over and then
Terminator.
Terminator.
No,
Yes.
Terminator was one.
Skynet was
More
a good-
recently, wasn't it? Steven Spielberg had a movie.
Was it iRobot? That was.
iRobot, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Oh, that's right.
And like connecting all of these intelligent services, like voice, right? And the mechanics, right? You already have automation of car manufacturing and all of that. So robots can be, connected and can do specific tasks. But now if you connect AI to it, where it's learning from it, I mean, it's not too far. It is possible, so.
Yeah, speaking of that real quick, I know when we did the poll, it was kind of a mixed bag as far as from a fearful, not fearful, or from a privacy concerns. Was there anyone, like any specific issues around, around that, Ryan, in your industry, the banking industry, anything specific for that or concerns?
I think the biggest concern with this type of technology, especially in the banking industry, would definitely be privacy.
Yeah.
That's probably going to be the main concern at this point, until it develops further and we kind of see where it takes us and how it evolves. I think it's kind of difficult to say. It's still in its infancy. We'll have to see what happens.
Yeah, and what I would like to say about that, Ryan, is that my take on it is like two things, and then definitely privacy is a concern when you're online, right?
Yep.
And this takes one step further because not everyone knows how to use this. There's a lot of buzz, so everyone's on it, right? But not everyone knows how to use it responsibly. For
Right.
example, do not put any private data that can identify you. And then OpenAI, in this case, the Chat GPT, kind of lets you know that, hey, do not type in anything that is personal because this is still experimental, which means that everything is being logged and someone could use it,
Right.
And with that concern, I also let people know that, hey, think of Google, like, how, it started with just being a search engine and now everyone, tries to find everything on Google, right? The moment you see something three-dimensional, like, you're outside and you see something, or you have a thought and you're trying to do your research on Google, I think it is best for all of us to get familiar with this technology and how to use it. Because the moment, because everyone uses Google, but very few are very smart at how to use it. They can find what they want just by a few keywords that they type in, and they're able to usually find. They just learned the art on how to ask Google. So in this case, learning how to use AI and making it as part of an efficiency assistant, if you will, making it use in your day-to-day activities could be helpful. And I think for that reason we should use it to learn what's the best way of using it, and privacy or things that we should or should not do will open up with that. And not exposing it to your proprietary data, like how do you hide it? Obviously, those concerns are always there with the IT teams to make sure that the network security and the permissions are properly set, as well as the servers and then websites, right? There's always the risk of a content author exposing some data and not realizing that, hey, it was meant to be only for internal folks behind a portal versus exposing it to everyone out there to see it, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, this is Tony. I had one of the security magazines I read, Security Week, had a report in it on the 28th. It was talking about Chat GPT had a data breach.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's nothing is 100%, but I just thought that was interesting as we're speaking about privacy.
No, that's a good point, Tony. And then, like I said, like everything is being logged, right? So it's possible that someone, and see that's what, like, if someone is trying to identify an organization and target it, they can also look at those interactions, right? And I don't know if they're logged with the user who'd actually type, those prompts in, because then you can target an organization and all its users and try to get some data just to look for if someone put something in and get a queue. For example, like, if one of, I'll take an example of Tesla or whatever, right? So if they are releasing a new product in the market and a competitor is trying to get an advantage, they can just research what their users are typing in and kind of get a sense of, where possibly they're heading. And that could be huge, right? For proprietary issues and things like that. So this happened, and I can see that happening more and more, because not just Chat GPT, but there is so many other AI companies that are surfacing that is doing facial recognition, talk about data, facial data, and using it for identification, right? Because if I'm not wrong, I think in China they have been adapting AI at a significant pace since 2017, and they use facial AI as part of mode of payment. So if you walk in to a grocery store, and if many of you heard about Amazon Fresh, where you can just go in, get any product from their store and then just walk out, because it kind of knows your Amazon Prime membership number and will charge you. But then if you have such data, what can you do with it in terms of making like impersonating someone, so it's kind of scary there.
Just two comments on that right now. 3.5 and 4.0 are both down. The GPT sites are down.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, they're shut down right now. So there's people are just swarming to it. I think Elon Musk's comments yesterday may have stimulated a rush to it all.
I saw that comment. Yeah, where he said he wanted to postpone development on AI and a bunch of so.
The other thing too is that there's a yin and yang and a push and a pull, and they're always bad actors. On the website, you're looking to, if somebody just innocently saying, I need to get ahead of this, so you Google integrating Chat GPT into your business. Yeah. Well, there are several Russian and Ukrainian companies. They're saying, we'll help you. Yeah, so the credibility of providing information to these actors, they could be very reputable, but chances are most of the mischievousness in the internet comes from those two countries, and then the former Eastern Bloc countries, Ukraine being one of them. Then also just one other last comment too is that the dark side is that, to Sujal's point of China using it for form of payment, they also use it as a social crediting system and tracking, so they know where you were every moment, what you were doing, and also rank you, and provide you access to certain things that some people can't because you're not ranked as a good party member. And that's been going on. They have documented 90% of their population. Wow. So and that 10% is probably in Tibet, where they're up in the mountains with the billy goats. But having said that, it's very unique, documenting your facial recognition with the speed and power of a 5G and also this type of technology. I think that is the greatest fear that I have. I mean, there are practical applications for good, but the flip side of that is there are definitely downsides to life as we know it.
Yeah.
And privacy specifically.
Yeah. I know in the security realm, there are some folks with bad actors are actually using it to write, I guess, bad Python scripts to hack other sites. So
any kind of vulnerabilities, talking about that, could be exposed, and you could just ask AI to tell me what's the latest vulnerability that has not been fixed. Things like that is scary, because information like prior to Google and search engines, like any information like that would be very hard to get to. And then came around Google, where anything that you want, you could search and find that easily. And now powering it with AI, with deep learning, it could possibly tell you the vulnerability and probably tell you how to how to actually execute it. So it's just something that especially for us, because we are involved in some way or fashion with the digital space and internet, that we have to be on top of this, right? And use it so that we understand, what all things to be careful about.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the biggest problem going forward, is that with so much enthusiasm, people can't wait to see how they can use it or whatever. I would advise caution. I would say, implement this in any kind of production application package, whatever you're doing, for in a real environment. I would introduce that very slowly, because right now chat is outpacing laws. It's ahead of things. There's a lot of gray areas. They're still trying to figure out some legal ramifications, like you guys were speaking about earlier. And they're even with the technology, we still don't know all the vulnerabilities yet. So I would be very cautious of how I would roll this out to a production environment. Now, we at Children's in the security team, we're using it in a very limited way and in a test environment. For example, our developers use it for their code and things like that, but none of that code, we don't take chat to Word, for example. We vet all the output and test it before we'd even think about introducing it to production. So I just hope a lot of corporations aren't just saying, hey, we're going to take chat's word and throw it out there, for consumption, because there could be vulnerabilities and a lot of problems that the thing's only really been exposed to the masses since November. That's when everybody was like, hey, all the enthusiasm. But I would advise caution as far as how it's implemented for real.
I just concur with your overarching comment there, Anthony, is that I wonder if there's a discussion to be had in your ThinkTenq live webinars for the social ramifications and the social considerations as it relates to the application of the technology. We as adopters and Enqbator as creators of unique technology are quick to jump on it, to your point, Anthony, but where are the social and ethical ramifications of that don't get talked about, because the train is moving so fast? You try to speak up and it's already, the train's already rolled over you because it's moving too quick, right? So I think that's a very intriguing element there, and I think it has to be had.
And it's such a hot topic too, Bob. That's the other thing, right? I mean, it's like every business out there is saying like, oh, this is the hottest topic. We gotta, we shouldn't miss out on this, right? And using it. But using it, not necessarily the pace and outpacing others to bring something out. I mean, that's obviously has some merit to it in terms of doing that, so that you can probably be the first and gain a good user base and beat the competition. But at the same time, doing it right probably outweighs being the first, because if you do it right, then possibly you've taken care of all the possible issues that could come out. And if you don't, then being the first and then being the first to fail, and how you fail could be, pretty drastic. So
I think the organization that publishes a best practices early on, then modifies them, will have a lot of CIOs touting their favor, primarily because of those concerns.
that is correct. That is correct. And then I think we talked about. Yeah, go ahead, John.
No, I just want to say, just to add to that yes, because it is sort of in its infancy, that it is sort of a supplemental way of getting additional information. That's all. True.
I was just going to divert the discussion towards the positives, because I think we talked a lot about the negatives.
Sorry about that.
Focusing on areas that we have to be cautious, and that is paramount, right? So we talk about that, and then we talk about where all we can use it. And I know we are probably running close to the hour. Yeah. So if you have time, I'll tell you one personal experiment that I'm doing with it, and then that's with automation of my house, right? So I've been very fascinated with automation in general. So at the house, everything is automated in terms of garage door, the lights and whatnot. But then using AI to understand the behavior. So for example, what's the first thing and the last thing that happens in the day? like, what lights can be turned on, turned off, because energy and, bills are rising, right? So how can you smartly consume that? How can you use the weather patterns? Many sprinkler systems, for example, like, look at the weather data and kind of turn on and turn off the sprinkler based on, how much water you might need, precipitation and all of that, considering all of those things. And just using that data to analyze and then come back with a schedule and then auto refining it based on, like, let's say in this winter we had a mild winter, or we had, heavy snow, like what are the things to do? That's, I don't know if if any of you have used IFTTT.
I have.
Okay, perfect, Bob. So you know what I'm talking about, by connecting all the things where, if you're entering a certain zip code and it can do something for you, or if you're nearing your house, starts heating up the house, and things like that, that you could do without even knowing of it, right? I mean, a lot of these newer cars have that feature where it can possibly talk beyond the car to your house or any other Internet of Things devices you have. One interesting use that I was seeing was that, using AI to know what's in your refrigerator, for example, or what's, gross, like what kind of vegetables you have, and it basically displays you, what you could cook tonight based on what you have, right? Which is interesting, right? Rather than going and finding or going for another, like if you need to urgently cook something, and just telling it like, hey, these are the things, and then it comes back with, here's a recipe for exactly what to do, or coming up with a game, for like what can I play right now with my kids. I mean, there's some really nice ways on how you could utilize that to come up with some good ideas for your day-to-day life, that could enhance it.
Well, the geofencing and geolocation elements are as well. Next time I drive by Home Depot, make sure my reminder says, hey,
exactly,
grab your new sprinkler head. That's already in there with Apple reminders, So I need to depart and drop early for a meeting. I really appreciate this conversation, and I look forward to being part of additional discussions in the future. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Bob. And
Thank you.
Yeah, we're right up to 2:00. So just want to thank everyone for coming. Thank you for taking the time out of your days. Tony, Ryan, everyone else, thanks for joining in. Sujal and Jon, thanks for your input. Sujal, any last thoughts?
Actually, I just wanted to ask everyone if they had any final thoughts, on it. So Tony, Ryan, if you want to share something, or Jon, Jada, anyone.
Well, from my point of view, I feel like, with GPT-4 coming out, which is supposed to be much more advanced and things like that, I still feel like we're in our infancy. I still feel like we're still trying to learn how to deal with it. But I think it has great potential. That's all I have to say. It has great potential, but I feel like we're still trying to navigate on how to regulate it, how to regulate information. There's privacy issues and things like that. So those are some of the things I'm concerned about.
Yeah, I would agree, Jon. And, it is the future. Undeniably, like, this is going to be in every part of that we're going to do. So we have to embrace it and try to be as knowledgeable, right, as much as possible, so that we can take advantage of it, because we know it's inevitable. So.
Yeah, and I think that I'm waiting for, I guess, future iterations, because there were some things that it struggles with, like emotion. It struggles with like making decisions and things like that. It's it doesn't really have practical applications really at this point with like healthcare diagnosis and things like that. So like you said, it's going to continue to evolve. It's going to continue to learn and get better. Right now, I just think it's it's really fun to play with, and to automate some simple tasks. I just the practical applications going forward are the sky's the limit. So I'm just excited for what's to come.
Exactly, Tony. They released the plugins, and it reminds me of iOS. When iOS did not have any app store, and then as soon as the app store opened, the next few years was just skyrocketing in terms of what was possible by a smartphone. Prior to that, smartphones could only do like, I would say it was still an advancement from those other phones that we had prior to a smartphone. But then the moment they released that app store and allowed people to access the physical, I would say, devices like GPS and things like that, capabilities of the phone, and then sky is the limit right now with all of these apps. And I think same way now with the plugins being allowed with ChatGPT. I've seen it, with the Open Table, I think, and some of the other where they can make reservations. I mean, it's just, yeah. So it's interesting. It's it just happened, and I know it's progressing with such a pace right now that we should be monitoring it every month or week, to see what's going on. But a lot of companies out there that are queuing up to start putting their plugins to it, and then possibly helping their businesses with that.
Yeah, I know we're right at the time to stop, but I just wanted to ask really quickly. I know you guys do a lot of work with websites and things of that nature. What about I think it's called DALL-E. It's the graphics version of chat. Have you guys started utilizing that at all? You basically, it uses natural language. You can basically say, draw me a picture of the Mona Lisa as Superman, Superwoman. It'll do it.
Yeah, I actually mentioned that earlier, and I've experimented with DALL-E, and I experimented with something called Midjourney, and also something called Stable Diffusion. They're both AI-based image generation AI based upon prompts. So I played around with those. I think Midjourney is just absolutely incredible. I think DALL-E's okay. But we kind of mentioned this before, it is in its infancy, and I can see it being more advanced. But yeah, I mean, you can literally type in, I need, a logo, and you type in certain specifications, and I need it in 4K, I need a black and white, whatever specifications. And what I like about Midjourney is that, like, if you give, it'll give back 4 versions, and you can say expand on version 4 with new criteria, and then it will also keep expanding and keep the dialogue going. So I've only used it just for experimental. I haven't used it for like day-to-day work. I've kind of used it for like personal artwork, but yeah, so that's how I've used it. So
yeah, I think the only concern at this time would be the using someone's proprietary style of generating.
Yeah, we mentioned that. Yeah.
Jon had mentioned earlier, Tony, about how that could be used. But certainly, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that they search for images of certain kind. School kids that could be using certain image searches, or trying to understand something and using this as kind of a sort of a querying or a chat or search engine, if you will, and trying to get an imagery of something. Some medical student trying to get an imagery of some organ that they're trying to explain or learn. There's just there's a lot of positive usage that is out there in terms of what is possible. So.
Just to add to that, with GPT-4 coming out, it has the ability to comment on images and graphics. And also, Adobe is also working on AI for Photoshop, in which you can
or something
prompts, and then let's say you have a logo, and you can say, make this logo with leaves, and it automatically does that within the Photoshop environment, and it'll also give alternatives for that, which is kind of interesting. So
yeah, I think with what you're saying, Jon, I believe you could throw an image at it and then query it, right? So you can say hey, what do you see? Try to analyze that picture, and then possibly say hey, can you sense the emotion of this particular face, or can you get some data about this person? And I think in China they're using this as an experiment, or maybe so basically if you use their commute transit system, that it can trace each face as it's coming in, and create some kind of an ID number they were talking about that they are
Right.
trying to establish for each person. And so if there is a crime, they can possibly identify that person immediately. And if they can't, it can sense the image and kind of tell you, like, possibly the age of the person and
Yeah.
other demographics of that person, things like that. So.
But yeah, so
Great. Any other thoughts? We're these guys we're definitely willing to stay around and talk more. a great subject on all sides.
yes, I did want to ask, because you mentioned using images with AI. Have you experimented with using images with AI? Has anyone had any experience with that, or what was your experience with that?
Yeah, John, I did
Yeah.
experiment with Midjourney myself a little bit. It's like you said, it's just a super powerful tool, and
Incredible, right?
yeah, I would say out of all the AI image generators that I've used, that far and above is probably the top.
Yeah, I have to agree. I played around with Stable Diffusion and DALL-E, but Midjourney just blows me away. I mean,
Yeah.
I played around. I put in very specific prompts.
Yeah.
And came back with absolutely incredible results. And I just love the fact that you can pick a version and keep working on a particular version. And
Yeah.
it's actually kind of scary, but in the same way, it's kind of exciting. So
It is, yeah. Yep. Yeah, it's very neat.
yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah. So
Okay. Well,
Okay.
I have
Thanks.
a
Thanks, Ryan.
2:15 meeting, so yeah, thank you guys both for your time. It was great chatting with you, and hopefully there is a part 2. I'd be very interested.
okay, great.
Looking forward to it.
Yep.
All right. Thanks, John. Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, Jaden.
Thank you guys. Have a great day.
Have a
All
good
right.
day.
Take
Bye.
care.